Well, Alara, look at this check.
From up here, you look so small. Stop this! Give me my check!
Pathetic!
So desperate!
Get your filthy hands off my counter. Alara Tillman froze. Her finger was still on the check. I'm sorry. You heard that, old hag. Silas Crow crumpled the check as if it were a dead cockroach. He held it up for the people behind her to see. Folks, look. Wool coat from decades ago smells like a bus seat, and she's trying to pass $250,000 at my window. Sir, that money is mine. Old hag, the shelter is 2 blocks away. I will not be spoken to like... He put the check into the desktop shredder. It buzzed into confetti. Seconds later, a man in a dark suit walked in, 2 bodyguards behind him. He saw Alara in the corner chair and said one sentence that drained every drop of color from Silas Crow's face. 40 minutes earlier, Alara Tillman stood in her small kitchen on Elm Street, holding a manila envelope she had waited 2 years to open. Inside was a cashier's check for $250,000, the settled proceeds of her late husband Victor's pension and life policy. 38 years at the steel mill, 2 years of paperwork, 1 envelope. She set it on the table next to a chipped coffee mug. She didn't smile. She just touched the edge of the paper with 1 finger, the way you touch the cheek of someone who is sleeping. Then she picked up the phone. Hi, baby, it came. A pause. Her son's voice on the other end, warm but firm. Mama, let me send a car, please. No, Rhett. I want to do it myself. Your father would have wanted me to. Mama, I'll call you when it's done. I love you. She hung up before he could argue. She put on her wool coat, the one Victor bought her the winter he made foreman. She slid Victor's gold watch onto her wrist. The inscription on the back read, For Alara, who built me, V, 1989. She closed her purse over the envelope. She walked to the bus stop. 40 minutes later, she stood in the lobby of Meridian Heritage Trust, the branch on 22nd Street, the same branch where she and Victor had opened their first joint account years earlier. The carpet was new, the tellers were new, nobody behind the counter recognized her face. She got in line behind a young woman in a tailored blazer. The young woman slid a check across to Silas Crow, $40,000. Silas smiled wide. Miss Whitfield's daughter, right? Tell your mom I said hi. He processed it in under a minute. The young woman walked away with the receipt. Alara stepped up to the counter. Silas's smile flattened. You here to open an account, ma'am? Community banking's over there. No, sir. I'd like to deposit this, please. She slid the check across the counter. Silas picked it up. He looked at the amount. He looked at her. He looked at the amount again. And then he laughed. Silas held the check up to the fluorescent light. He turned it slowly, the way a customs agent turns a passport he's already decided is fake. Where'd you get this, ma'am? It's a settlement from my husband's pension and life insurance. The court released it 2 weeks ago. He didn't lower the check. And what was your husband's job exactly? He worked 38 years at Bethlehem Steel. Silas leaned sideways and called over his shoulder, loud enough for the next teller to hear. Hey, Kyle, steel mill pension, $250,000. Kyle laughed without looking up. Sure thing, buddy. And I'm the King of England. A small ripple of laughter ran through the line. Alara felt it on the back of her neck. Her jaw tightened. Young man, that money is documented. The issuing bank is printed right there on the check. You can call them right now. Oh, I'm going to call somebody, ma'am. Don't you worry about that. He picked up the phone on his counter. He didn't dial. He just held it to his ear and pretended. After a long theatrical pause, he set the phone back down and waved across the lobby. Margaret, could you come over here for a second? Isolde Whitfield was a woman in her 50s with a navy blazer and a thin gold chain on her glasses. 11 years branch manager. She walked over the way a teacher walks toward a student caught cheating. She didn't say hello to Alara. She didn't look at Alara. She spoke directly to Silas. What have we got? Lady's trying to pass $250,000. Says it's a steel mill pension. Isolde finally turned her head. Her eyes ran down Alara's coat, down to her shoes, back up to her face. The whole assessment took 2 seconds. She didn't bother hiding it. Ma'am, we're going to need to run this through fraud verification. It's not fraud. It's a cashier's check from First National, same as the one your teller cashed for the woman before me, without a single question. Isolde's mouth tightened. That's what we're going to find out. She turned back to Silas. Pull the lobby camera over. Document everything she says, everything she does. Silas reached up and angled the small ceiling-mounted camera so it pointed directly at Ilara's face. A red light blinked on. Ilara felt it the way you feel a draft in a room you thought was closed. The temperature of the lobby had changed. The line behind her had gone quiet. Phones were already coming out, but not pointed at Silas, pointed at her. An older white woman in line 2 places back frowned. She wore a tan raincoat and held a leather handbag against her chest. Tessa Hayes. She opened her mouth like she was going to say something, then she closed it. Ilara felt that too. "Ma'am," Isolde said, "I'm going to need 3 forms of identification, proof of address, and we'll be contacting the issuing institution. In cases like this, we follow policy." Cases like what exactly? Isolde didn't answer. She just held out her hand, palm up, waiting. Ilara opened her purse. Her fingers were steady. She laid 3 things on the counter: a Pennsylvania driver's license, her social security card, and a small laminated card, edges worn soft from 30 years in the same wallet, with a signature in dark blue ink across the bottom. "This is my customer card, opened years ago with my husband Victor. The branch manager who signed it was named Harold Pearson. He retired years later. I went to his funeral." Isolde picked up the laminated card. She turned it over once. She slid it back across the counter without looking at it. "That doesn't mean anything anymore, ma'am. We're a different bank now. Different ownership. Different systems. I've been a customer here for 32 years. And I've been the branch manager for 11. I've never seen you before in my life." Ilara's hand stayed on the customer card. She did not pick it back up. "That's because I came in once a month for 32 years and you never looked up." Isolde blinked, just once. Then her face closed again, smooth as a banker's window at closing time. Ilara's knees hurt. There was a chair against the wall 10 feet away. She'd watched the young woman before her sit in that chair while her transaction processed. She'd watched her cross her legs and scroll through her phone and yawn. "I'd like to sit down, just while you verify." "Ma'am, the chair is for paying customers. Please remain at the counter." "I am a paying customer. I have been for 32 years." "You are a customer when this check clears. Please remain at the counter." Ilara stood. Silas picked up the phone again. This time, he actually dialed. He spoke loud enough for the entire lobby to hear, performing every syllable. "Yeah, hi, fraud line. I've got a woman at my window trying to pass a $250,000 instrument. No prior history at this branch. No documentation matching the issuing bank. Yeah, I'll hold." Ilara's voice was very quiet. "I have history. I just showed it to you." Silas, eyes still on the phone, waved a hand at her like he was waving away a fly at a picnic. Ma'am, please let the adults work." Something in the lobby shifted. A teenage girl in line giggled. Her friend elbowed her. They both giggled harder. An older man behind Tessa Hayes muttered, "Unbelievable." And Ilara understood with a small cold drop in her chest that he was muttering it about her, not about Silas, about her. Tessa Hayes stepped forward. Her voice was thin, but it carried. "Excuse me, young man, that is not how you speak to a—" Isolde cut her off without turning around. "Ma'am, please don't interfere with bank operations. We're following protocol." "You're following protocol?" Tessa said. "That woman is older than my mother." "Ma'am, last warning. Step back in line or step outside." Tessa froze. Her hand was still half raised. She looked at Ilara. Ilara saw the apology in her eyes, and underneath it, the fear of being the next woman ordered to a chair. Tessa turned and walked toward the door. She stopped at the door. She didn't open it. She just stood there with her back to the counter, holding her handbag against her chest like a shield. Silas hung up the phone, pretended to write something on a notepad. Then he looked up at Ilara with a small, satisfied smile. "Ma'am, you'll need to step aside. There are other customers waiting." "I will not step aside until you process my check." "Then we have a problem." Isolde leaned in. Her voice dropped to that quiet, even tone certain people use right before they fire you. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one more time. Step away from the counter." Ilara didn't move. Isolde turned her head and called across the lobby. "Harlan, could you come here, please?" Harlan Bradford was the security guard, 62 years old, ex-cop, 15 years at this branch. He walked over slowly, the way a man walks toward something he doesn't want to do. He looked at Ilara. He looked at Isolde. He looked at Ilara again. "Isolde, she's not doing anything." "Harlan, could you escort this woman to the chair, please?" Harlan's jaw moved. He didn't move his feet. Isolde, she's a 70-year-old lady with a check. That was not a question, Harlan. Do your job. Harlan put one hand very gently on Alara's elbow. He didn't grip. He just rested it there, the way you rest your hand on a child you're afraid will run into the street. His voice was low enough that only she could hear it. Ma'am, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I really am. Alara nodded. She let him guide her 4 steps to the chair against the wall. She sat down. She folded her hands in her lap. She did not cry. Isolde returned to the counter. She picked up Alara's check from where Silas had set it down. She held it up between 2 fingers. She made sure the lobby was watching. For the record, this bank does not process unverifiable instruments under suspicious circumstances. We have a fiduciary responsibility to our other customers and to the federal regulators who oversee this institution. The lobby was silent. Silas was grinning now. He couldn't help it. The grin was on his face like he'd won a prize at a fair. Then he reached past Isolde and plucked the check out of her hand. You know what, Isolde? Let me handle this. I've had enough of this lady's mouth. He turned the desktop shredder toward the lobby. He held the check up high so everyone could see it. His voice went loud and stagey, performing for the line. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we call a teachable moment. When you try to defraud a federally insured institution, this is what happens to your fake paper. Watch and learn. Silas, Isolde started. He didn't hear her, or he heard her and didn't care. He fed the check into the shredder. $250,000 dropped into the plastic bin in long, pale ribbons. The lobby did not move. From the chair against the wall, Alara Tillman watched the ribbons fall. She did not stand up. She did not raise her voice. She said very quietly, just loud enough for Silas to hear, "Son, that check was real, and what you just did is going to follow you for the rest of your life." Silas shrugged. He was still smiling. "Sure it was, sweetheart. You can file a complaint at customer service. There's a form." Isolde stepped in front of him, blocking him from Alara's view. She straightened her blazer. She spoke to the lobby, calm and corporate. "Folks, I apologize for the disturbance. We're going to get the line moving again. Next customer, please." The line shuffled forward. A man in a hoodie stepped up to Silas's window. Silas greeted him cheerfully. "Hi there, sir. How can I help you today?" Tessa Hayes was still at the door. Her back was still turned. She finally opened it and walked out into the gray morning. Alara watched her go. Alara watched the line move. She watched Silas stamp a deposit slip and slide it back across the counter. She watched Isolde return to her glass office and close the door behind her. She watched the small camera on the ceiling. The red light was still blinking. Harlan Bradford stood 3 feet from her chair. He was looking at the floor. His voice was a whisper. "Ma'am, is there someone I can call for you? Please, family, anyone." Alara looked at him. She thought about it for a long time, long enough that Harlan shifted his weight. "No, son, thank you, but no. This one I do alone." Harlan's eyes closed for a second. He nodded once. He walked back to his post by the door. Alara folded her hands tighter in her lap. Victor's gold watch caught the light. The inscription on the back pressed against her wrist. "For Alara, who built me. V. 1989. She didn't know yet. None of them knew yet that the camera Isolde had ordered turned toward her face was at that very moment uploading every second of footage to a corporate server 2 states away, a server monitored by the Compliance and Ethics Division of Meridian Holdings, a server her son had personally ordered installed the previous spring. Silas finished processing the man in the hoodie. He stamped the receipt. He smiled. "Have a great day, sir." He glanced over at the chair against the wall. He winked at Alara. The lobby kept moving without her. That was the part Alara hadn't expected. Not the shredding, not the wink. The way the line just shuffled forward like nothing had happened, like $250,000 hadn't just dropped into a plastic bin 10 feet from where she was sitting. A young father stepped up to Silas's window with a baby strapped to his chest. Silas cooed at the baby and asked about her name. The father said, "Lily." Silas said, "Beautiful name, beautiful name." They both laughed. Alara watched the back of the father's head. She watched the baby's small fist open and close against his shirt. She thought, he saw what just happened. He saw all of it. And he is laughing about a baby's name. She did not think it angrily. She thought it the way you think about weather. As a fact, her purse was on her lap. She opened it. She took out her phone. The screen lit up. The top of her favorites list was a single word, Rhett. Her thumb hovered over the name. She did not press it. She thought about her son the way she had thought about him for 45 years. The boy who had brought her flowers from the neighbor's yard when he was 4. The teenager who had worked 2 jobs through high school because she had asked him not to take loans. The man who at 31 had bought her a house she had refused to move into because hers was paid off and Victor's tools were in the garage. She had spent a lifetime not asking her son for things. She wasn't going to start today. She closed the phone. She put it back in her purse. A small voice next to her said, "Are you thirsty?" Alara looked up. A boy was standing in front of her chair. He was 8 years old, maybe 9. He had dark hair that needed cutting and a red sweatshirt with a cartoon dinosaur on the front. In his hand, he held a small paper cone of water from the cooler by the door. He held it out to her. "My mom said you weren't, but I think you are. You've been sitting a long time." Alara took the paper cone. Her hand was steady. "Thank you, sweetheart. What's your name?" "Cade." "Cade? That's a good name." "Cade, come here right now." The voice came from the line. A young woman in a beige cardigan, mid-30s, was already walking toward them. Her face was the specific shade of pink that white women turn when they have been caught noticing something they were trying not to notice. She grabbed Cade's wrist. "Sweetheart, we do not bother the customers." "Come on." "She's not a customer, Mom. She's just sitting there." The mother's eyes flicked to Isolde's glass office. Isolde was watching through the window, arms crossed. The mother's grip on Cade's wrist tightened. "Cade, now!" Cade looked at Alara one more time. He looked at the cone of water in her hand. He waved, a small, half-finished wave. His mother pulled him back into the line. Alara held the paper cone in her lap. She didn't drink it. She just rested both hands around it, the way you rest your hands around a candle. She thought about Cade. She thought about the way he had looked at her, not with pity, which she had been bracing for, but with a kind of plain bafflement, as if he could not understand why an old lady was sitting in a corner by herself in the middle of the morning. She thought, he saw me as a person, and his mother taught him in 3 seconds that this is not allowed. That was the part that almost made her cry. Almost. She did not cry. She turned Victor's gold watch on her wrist. The inscription pressed warm against her skin. "For Alara who built me. V. 1989. She thought about the morning Victor had given it to her. The factory floor was loud through the open window. He had handed her the box across the kitchen table and said, "I'm not good at words, Alara. You know that. So I had a man at the jewelry store do the words for me." She had opened the box. She had read the inscription. She had said, "Victor Tillman, this is too much." He had said, "No, Alara, it is not enough." She turned the watch on her wrist again. A door opened across the lobby. Isolde stepped out of her glass office holding a thin folder. She walked to the customer service desk without looking at Alara. She handed the folder to a young woman in a name tag. She said something quiet. The young woman nodded. Isolde walked back to her office. She did not look at Alara on the way back either. Alara stood up. The lobby was used to her sitting now. When she stood, 2 heads turned, then 3, then 5. The line went a little quieter. She walked slowly to the customer service desk. "Excuse me, I'd like to file a complaint." The young woman behind the desk had a name tag that said Lila. Lila did not meet her eyes. "Ma'am, we have a form for that. You can take one home and mail it in." "I'd like to file in person." "We don't take in-person complaints at the branch level, ma'am. Corporate handles those." "Could I have the corporate phone number then?" "It's on the form." Lila slid a thick packet across the counter. The top sheet said Meridian Heritage Trust Customer Grievance Intake in block letters. There were 32 pages. "Could I speak to a regional manager?" "Regional doesn't take walk-ins, ma'am." "Could I have the name of the contact at First National who issued my check so I can verify it was real?" "That's confidential information, ma'am." "It's my own check." "It's confidential information, ma'am." Alara stood at the desk for one more second. Lila did not look up. Alara took the packet. She walked back to the chair against the wall. She sat down. She set the packet on her lap on top of the paper cone of water. She thought about how a building like this had been designed. Every door soft, every voice polite, every form 10 pages too long, every escalation path that led to another desk, another packet, another "I'm sorry, ma'am." No one was yelling at her anymore. That was the cruelty of it. The yelling part was over. But I will see. Really, the cruelty was bureaucracy. She had taught 4th grade for 32 years. She knew exactly how this worked. She had seen it done to children, not children like Cade, but children who looked like her grandson. She had watched the same soft doors close on small black faces for 3 decades. She had just never had it done to her. Across the lobby, Harlan Bradford caught her eye. He gave her a small, sad nod. She nodded back. The front door chimed. 2 men walked in. They were not customers. They were not in line. They walked straight past Silas's counter without slowing. The first one was older, 50s, carrying a leather portfolio under one arm. He had the walk of a man who had fired people before lunch and did not enjoy it, but did not lose sleep over it either. The second one was younger, taller, dark suit, no briefcase. He walked half a step behind the first one, scanning the lobby the way a man scans a room he owns. His eyes passed over the line, over the tellers, over Isolde's glass office. His eyes landed on the chair against the wall. He stopped walking for a moment. Nothing in the lobby moved. Not Silas, not Isolde, not Alara. The younger man's face changed, just for a second. Just enough. Then he started walking toward her. The older man with his portfolio stopped at the front of Silas's line. He didn't get in it. He flipped open a corporate ID and held it across the counter 6 inches from Silas's face. Calvin Vance, Compliance and Ethics, Meridian Holdings. I need every teller and your branch manager in the lobby right now. Silas's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Is this a drill? No, son, this is not a drill. Silas looked toward Isolde's glass office. Isolde had already seen Calvin's ID through the window. She was on her feet. Her face had gone the color of paper. The younger man, the one in the dark suit, had not moved since he'd seen Alara. He was still standing in the middle of the lobby, halfway between the door and the chair against the wall. He started walking. He walked slowly. He walked the way a man walks when his legs are heavier than he remembered them being. The lobby went still around him. The teenage girl stopped scrolling. The young father with the baby turned his whole body to watch. Cade, in his mother's grip, stared open-mouthed. The man stopped 2 feet from Alara's chair. He got down on one knee. He took the paper cone of water out of her lap. He set it gently on the floor next to her shoe. He took both of her hands in his. His voice, when it came, was not a CEO's voice. It was a son's voice, and it cracked on the first word. Mama. Alara's chin trembled just once. She steadied it. Hi, baby. Why? He swallowed. Why didn't you call me? Because I shouldn't have to, Rhett. He closed his eyes. He pressed his forehead to the back of her hand. For a long moment, he stayed there. The lobby watched the 45-year-old man in a $2,000 suit kneel on a bank carpet and try not to cry into his mother's wrist. When he lifted his head, his face had changed. It was not soft anymore. He stood up. He turned around. He faced the lobby. His voice carried without effort. He did not raise it. He did not need to. That's my mom. 3 words. They landed in the lobby like a glass breaking on a tile floor. Silas's face drained of color from the hairline down. Isolde, halfway across the lobby, stopped walking. Her hand went to the corner of the customer service desk to keep her upright. The younger man kept talking. My name is Rhett Tillman. I am the chief executive officer of Meridian Holdings, the parent company of this bank. And the woman you have been humiliating for the last 40 minutes is my mother. A single phone somewhere in the line hit the floor. Rhett did not look at it. The check that was destroyed at that counter was issued by my office. It is real. It was earned by my father over 38 years at Bethlehem Steel. And it is hers. He turned his head. Calvin Vance was already opening his portfolio. Pull the lobby footage from the last 90 minutes. All cameras. All angles. Preserve it on the corporate server immediately. Nothing on this branch's local drives gets touched. Already done, sir. We started the upload pull from the car. Good. Rhett turned again. This time he looked directly at Isolde Whitfield. Isolde had not moved from the customer service desk. Her hand was still on the corner of it. Miss Whitfield, come here, please. She walked over. 11 years of practiced authority drained out of her face with every step. When she stopped in front of Rhett, she was a head shorter than him. She had not been a head shorter than him before. Mr. Tillman, sir. If I had known. Stop talking, Miss Whitfield. She stopped talking. You watched a 32-year customer of this bank be denied a seat. You instructed your security guard to physically guide her to a chair. You ordered the lobby camera turned toward her face. which, by the way, was the most useful thing you have done in 11 years because that footage is now evidence. You stood 3 feet away while your teller destroyed a legal cashier's check from First National, and you did all of this in front of a lobby of witnesses with a federal compliance camera recording every second. Isolde opened her mouth. Rhett held up one finger. I am not finished. Her mouth closed. Tell me, Miss Whitfield. Show me. Find one line in the Meridian Heritage Trust Employee Handbook that authorizes a teller to feed a customer's instrument into a shredder at the counter. One line. I will wait. Silence. Find me the policy that denies a 72-year-old woman a chair while she waits for verification. One line. I will wait. Silence. Find me the line that calls a 32-year customer sweetheart and tells her the homeless shelter is 2 blocks down. Isolde's eyes filled. She did not blink them clear. The tears just sat there. That's what I thought. Miss Whitfield, you didn't follow policy. You followed an assumption, and the assumption is what we are going to be reviewing. Rhett turned finally to Silas Crow. Silas had not moved from behind his counter. His hands were flat on the glass. His mouth was open. The wink he had given Alara 4 minutes earlier was the last expression his face had been ready for. Rhett walked up to the window. He did not lean in. He did not raise his voice. Son, look at her. Silas's eyes flicked toward Alara, then back. No, look at her. Really look. Silas turned his head. He looked at Alara Tillman in the chair against the wall. He looked at the wool coat, the scuffed shoes, the folded hands, the 32-year customer card still on the counter where Isolde had left it. He looked at her for a long time. That, Rhett said, is the face of every single customer you have ever decided was not worth your time. I want you to remember it, because for the next 6 weeks, that face is the only thing you are going to be looking at. Silas swallowed. Calvin. Yes, sir. Effective immediately. Isolde Whitfield suspended without pay, pending termination review and federal civil rights inquiry. Silas Crow suspended with pay, pending HR and ethics review. Harlan Bradford, where's the security guard? Harlan stepped forward. His shoulders were squared. He had been waiting to be called. Mr. Tillman, sir, I'm right here. Mr. Bradford, the footage shows you objecting twice, loudly, to Miss Whitfield's instructions. Is that correct? Yes, sir. You also apologized to my mother on the record. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Bradford. You will keep your position, and you will receive a letter of commendation in your file by the end of the week. Harlan's jaw moved. He nodded once. He did not trust his voice. Rhett turned back to Calvin. And Calvin, one more thing. Sir, open an internal audit. Every fraud review flag Isolde Whitfield and Silas Crow have personally initiated at this branch for the last 24 months. Cross-reference by customer demographic. I want every name. I want every file. I want the full report on my desk in 8 weeks. Calvin was already writing. Yes, sir. Isolde made a small sound. Not a word, just a sound. Rhett did not turn back to her. He walked the 4 steps to Alara's chair. He bent down. He picked up the paper cone of water from where he had set it on the floor. He held it out to his mother. Alara took it. Their fingers touched. She drank. For the first time in 51 minutes, Alara Tillman drank her water. Across the lobby by the door, Tessa Hayes had come back in. She was standing just inside the entrance, both hands over her mouth, watching. Tessa Hayes walked across the lobby with both hands still pressed to her mouth. She didn't go to Rhett. She didn't go to Isolde. She walked directly to the chair against the wall. She stopped in front of Alara. Her eyes were wet. Ma'am, I was here. I saw all of it. And I walked out that door because I was afraid of her. Tessa jerked her chin toward Isolde without looking at her. I'm 70 years old. I have grandchildren. And I let a woman sit in a corner alone because I was afraid of being asked to leave a line. She took a breath. I'm sorry. I am so deeply sorry. I should have stood with you. Alara reached up. She took Tessa's hand. You came back. That's the part that matters. Tessa's shoulders shook once. She squeezed Alara's hand and stepped back. She did not let go until Alara let go first. Across the lobby, Cade had broken free of his mother's grip. He was walking toward Alara's chair. His mother did not stop him this time. She just watched, both hands over her face. Cade stopped next to Tessa. He looked at Alara. He looked at the empty paper cone in her hand. Do you want more water? Alara smiled, the first real smile of the morning. No, sweetheart. I'm okay now. Thank you. Okay. He looked up at Rhett. He looked at Rhett's suit. He looked at Rhett's bodyguard standing 6 feet behind him. Are you her son? I am. She's a nice lady. I know she is, buddy. Thank you for noticing. Cade nodded, satisfied. He walked back to his mother. Rhett watched him go. Then he turned and walked back to Silas's counter. Silas had not moved. His hands were still flat on the glass. Mr. Crow, one more thing before Calvin escorts you out. Silas's throat moved. Yes, sir. Pick up Mrs. Tillman's customer card, the one Miss Whitfield slid back across this counter and refused to look at. Pick it up, walk it over to my mother, and return it to her. Silas picked up the small laminated card from where it had sat for the last hour. He walked the 10 feet to Alara's chair. Every step was a public sentence. He held the card out. His hand was shaking. Mrs. Tillman, I am so sorry. There is nothing I can say. Alara held up one hand. Don't apologize to me yet, son. Silas froze. Apologize to me when you've earned it. Silas nodded. He could not speak. He set the customer card in her palm. He walked back to the counter and stood with his hands at his sides, waiting for Calvin. Alara closed her fingers around the card. Then she stood up. She had been sitting for 53 minutes. Her knees protested. She straightened anyway. She walked slowly to the center of the lobby where Rhett was standing. She put her hand on her son's arm. Rhett, sit down with me a minute. Mama, sit. There were no chairs in the middle of the lobby. Rhett sat down on the carpet. The CEO of Meridian Holdings, in a custom suit, sat cross-legged on a bank floor next to his mother's shoes. Alara stayed standing. She wanted the lobby to hear what she was about to say. You're going to fire that boy today, aren't you? Yes, ma'am. Don't. Rhett's head came up. Mama, he fed your check into a shredder. He called you a hag. He winked at you. I know what he did, baby. I was there. Then why? Because if you fire him today, he learns one thing. He learns that the woman he humiliated had a powerful son, and tomorrow morning he wakes up in a different city with a different name on his name tag, and he does it again to a different woman who does not have a powerful son. And I am tired of that woman. The lobby was very quiet. What I want, Rhett, is for him to sit through every single one of those audits Calvin is opening. I want him in the room. I want him reading every file. I want him seeing every name and every face and every black woman and every old man and every Mexican grandmother that he and Isolde flagged for fraud review over the last 24 months. I want him to know by the end of those 8 weeks exactly how many Alaras there were before me. She turned to Silas. He was crying now, quietly. He had not made a sound. And then, son, after you've read every file, after you've seen every face, then you can decide if you want to come find me and apologize. And I will decide if I want to hear it. Silas nodded. He nodded again. He could not stop nodding. Mama, Rhett said quietly, are you sure? I taught 4th grade for 32 years, baby. The ones you give up on are the ones who never get better. The ones you make sit in their mistake. Those are the ones who change. She looked at her son sitting on the carpet at her feet. And besides, I didn't raise you to be the kind of man who fires people for sport. I raised you to be the kind of man who fixes things. Rhett reached up. He took her hand. Yes, ma'am. He stood up. He brushed off his suit. He turned to Calvin Vance. Modify the order. Silas Crow, suspended without pay for 8 weeks. During that suspension, he reports daily to the Compliance and Ethics Division. He sits through every minute of the audit. He reads every file. At the end of 8 weeks, the division will recommend whether he returns to a teller position, transfers to a non-customer-facing role, or separates from the company. The decision will be made by the audit team, not by me. Yes, sir. Rhett looked at Isolde. Miss Whitfield, your termination is unchanged. The federal inquiry is unchanged. You will be escorted from this branch in the next 10 minutes. Your access cards and corporate credentials will be revoked before you reach your car. Isolde did not respond. There was nothing left in her face to respond with. Rhett turned back to the lobby, to the line that had watched everything, to the teenage girls, to the young father with the baby, to Cade in his mother's arms, to Tessa Hayes, to Harlan Bradford by the door. To everyone in this lobby, I want to thank you for staying. The footage from today will be part of a federal civil rights review and an internal audit. If any of you witnessed what happened and are willing to provide a statement, my compliance team will be at this branch all afternoon. He took his mother's arm, and now I'm going to take my mother home. 6 weeks later, the lobby of Meridian Heritage Trust on 22nd Street looked the same. Same carpet, same teller windows, same blinking red light on the ceiling camera. Everything else had changed. Isolde Whitfield's office was empty. Her name had been removed from the door the morning after Rhett walked his mother home. The federal civil rights inquiry had taken 3 weeks to file its preliminary findings. By the end of week 4, Isolde had been formally terminated for cause, with the audit naming 14 separate incidents over 24 months, in which she had personally initiated fraud reviews against Black, Latino, and elderly customers, and 0 against white customers under the age of 65. The audit was published. Reuters picked it up. The Philadelphia Inquirer ran the lobby footage. By the end of the week, 3 other Meridian branches had reported their own pending reviews. Silas Crow did not watch the news. He could not. For 8 weeks, 6 days a week, Silas sat in a small conference room on the 12th floor of the Meridian Holdings corporate building. He read files, 14 of them, one at a time. Each file was a customer. Each customer had a name and a face and a story Isolde and Silas had decided was suspicious. There was Dorothy Howren, 81, who had been refused a wire transfer of her own retirement funds because Silas had thought her handwriting looked off. There was Marcus Ellison, Alara's age, a retired postal worker whose deposit of a tax refund had been held for 9 business days while Isolde verified. There was a young mother named Angela Bowers, whose child support check had been shredded in front of her, just like Alara's, 2 years before Alara. Same shredder, same teller window. No CEO had walked through the door that day. Silas read Angela Bowers' file 3 times. On the last day of his suspension, the compliance division asked him what he had learned. He sat for a long time before he answered. He said, "I learned that I did this 14 times, and only the 15th one had a son." The division recommended he transfer to a non-customer-facing role. He accepted. He started in records administration the following Monday, 2 floors below the conference room where he had spent 8 weeks reading. On the 3rd week of his new job, Silas Crow asked through the proper channels if he could meet with Alara Tillman. The answer came back on Meridian letterhead. Mrs. Tillman has agreed. At her kitchen table, Saturday. Bring nothing. He went. He sat at Alara's kitchen table on a Saturday morning. Alara poured him coffee. She did not pour it kindly. She did not pour it cruelly. She poured it like she would have poured it for anyone. Silas held the cup with both hands. "Mrs. Tillman, I read every file. I read Angela Bowers 3 times. I am not here to ask you to forgive me." "Good. I am here to ask if I can come back next Saturday." Alara looked at him for a long moment. "Yes, you can." He came back the next Saturday, and the one after that. 6 months later, the Victor Tillman Center for Customer Dignity opened in a renovated branch on Lehigh Avenue, funded by Meridian Holdings, designed by Alara. The mission statement, hand-lettered on the lobby wall, read, "Every person who walks through these doors is a person, not a guess, not a story we tell ourselves." Alara taught the first training class herself. She taught it in the same wool coat she had worn to the 22nd Street branch 6 months earlier. She placed a small framed object on the lectern at the start of class. It was the laminated customer card, the one Isolde had refused to look at, the one Silas had walked across the lobby and returned to her hand. The first row of the first class included 36 new tellers and 2 senior staff members from corporate. In the second row, taking careful notes in a black spiral notebook, sat Silas Crow. Alara saw him there. She did not single him out. She did not avoid him. She taught the class. At the end of the hour, she said one thing directly to him in front of the room. "Mr. Crow, stay after, please. I have a question for you about the curriculum." He stayed. They worked on the curriculum for 2 hours. Tessa Hayes was on the advisory board. Cade's mother had sent Alara a handwritten letter. Harlan Bradford had been promoted to head of security at the Victor Tillman Center. Justice is loud, repair is quiet, and both, Alara had decided, were necessary. A year later, on a morning in autumn, Alara Tillman placed 2 objects on the lectern at the Victor Tillman Center. The laminated customer card, edges still worn soft from 30 years in the same wallet, and next to it, a single ribbon of shredded paper sealed inside a small glass frame. She looked out at the class, 40 new tellers, badges still shiny on their collars. Some were nervous, some were bored. All of them were watching her. She picked up the glass frame. She held it where the light from the window caught it. This piece of paper used to be worth $250,000. The morning a man fed it into a machine, it became worth more, because it became the reason you are sitting in this room today. She set the frame back down. She picked up her chalk. She started the lesson. Real talk. The way you treat people when you think they got nothing. That's who you really are. From no suit, no money, no title, just vibes and your character speaking louder than anything else. Anybody can act nice when somebody's rich, famous, or useful to them. That's easy. But being kind to strangers, respecting people who can't do anything for you, yeah, that's the real flex. And honestly, being gentle in a cold world ain't weakness, bro. It takes real strength to stay good-hearted out here. So stay humble. Treat everybody with dignity. You never know who somebody is becoming or what battle they fighting silently.